This summer, World in Action set up home to show the sorry state of the so-called home improvement industry. The tricks of tradesmen like these cost us millions and cause untold misery. But if you take them on, be prepared for a bumpy ride.
Yeah, oh, but don't put the camera in my face.
If you took money from a shop, you'd be accountable for it, but they don't seem to be.
Welcome back to the World in Action House of Horrors. Up in the loft, our resident expert is springing a trap by springing a leak.
I've loosened a nut so that the water drips down and leaks into the ceiling. It's a very basic fault, very easy to spot. Any competent plumber should be able to spot it and fix it in 15-20 minutes.
But it's not the competent we're interested in, quite the opposite. Oliver, posing as the man of the house, calls in the specially selected plumbers. What they don't realise is that he's a World in Action journalist. Leonie poses as his wife. She's actually a Surrey Trading Standards officer, our partners in this special investigation.
The traders we're inviting in are all the traders who feature prominently in the consumer complaints that we receive.
The plumbers we chose to fix our leak don't just feature prominently in the complaints file. Their name ensures they're also fairly prominent in the local directory. AAA Limited of Surrey. 7A's dispatched Ralph. What he doesn't know is his every move is being recorded by secret cameras. Soon after the plumber arrived, we dispatched Oliver and Leonie, leaving Ralph to his own devices.
Put out the latch.
Yes. Yeah, help yourself to
That's all right, I won't be setting up camp here.
But he did. In fact, within minutes, Ralph was making himself thoroughly at home. Soon it seemed what was ours was also Ralph's. He closed the front door before going into our front room. Notice he's empty-handed. He obviously had a good rummage around. He finally emerges, having helped himself to a going-away present, before he'd even started work. It may only be a sealant gun, but it was ours. Now, it's Ralph's. Then he helped himself to our towels. It was starting to look like Ralph was planning to move in. When he finally turned his attention to the plumbing job, though, it became obvious he wasn't. Ralph, for reasons known only to himself, decided to remove the fully functioning central heating water tank. In it, sludge and filth from the radiators. The large tank is the cold water supply to the bathroom. He obviously wasn't planning to clean his teeth at our house. Our resident expert later examined 7A's handiwork. For him, Ralph had truly plumbed the depths of his profession.
We induced a leak on the cold water storage tank here, and the plumber has come along and replaced this tank quite unnecessarily. Hasn't made a good job of it. Worse still, he's actually tipped the water, which is contaminated with chemicals, into this tank, which is stored the water that you use for brushing and cleaning your teeth.
Why on earth did he do that?
I have no idea. Sheer laziness from going downstairs. But, you know, apart from ripping you off and charging a hell of a lot of money that he shouldn't have done, he could well have poisoned the family that are here.
7A's charged us £190 for the privilege. Then from Ralph came reassuring words.
Yeah, there's nothing else in the loft that's likely to be a problem.
Ralph was wrong. Not content to leave a toxic cocktail bubbling in our water tank, Ralph hadn't even fixed the leak. But he did leave us some mementos. Not one to put himself out, Ralph didn't travel too far when he needed something to prop up the new tank. The ever-resourceful plumber just ripped up one of our floorboards. And remember his earlier visit to the linen cupboard. Putting things back where he found them was too much trouble for Ralph. When he finished the job, he simply threw in the towel. 7A's tell us Ralph no longer works for them. This is Liz Pickard's boiler, another dissatisfied 7A's customer. She discovered there were many more like her when she called in another firm to put right what 7A's hadn't.
I'd had this problem with an outfit called 7A's. The man on the phone immediately laughed and called across his office to a colleague to the effect that here's another one who's been done by 7A's.
Liz called in 7A's when her boiler broke down. With no heating or hot water and 2 young children, it was an emergency.
He came downstairs, said, right, it's working, it's fine, and wrote out an invoice for me. And the invoice was for £743.44. So I handed over £743.44, and a week later the boiler broke again.
When she called to complain, 7A's, who boast of being available any time, any place and anywhere, were anything but.
They were surly, bordering on the abusive, certainly completely unhelpful.
Liz didn't want them back. She called in a second plumber.
In his opinion, the circuit board, which 7A's claimed to have replaced, was an old circuit board and certainly not one which was 7 days old. It had had its identification labels removed. I don't know by whom, certainly not by me. And some of the other parts, which appear on the invoices having been replaced, were covered in thick dust. In his opinion, could not possibly be a week old.
The complaint went to Surrey Trading Standards. But without an expert and camera in the bathroom, there wasn't enough evidence. As with 99% of complaints, there was nothing they could do.
It's the evidential problem you've got as well, isn't it? You know, that,
yeah, we have to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that an offence has been committed, and obviously that's extremely difficult after the work's been done, because we don't know the state of the boiler, of the roof, of the washing machine before the work was carried out. So we're left in a position of not having the evidence to go any further with.
Sometimes, though, you know you've been conned. Take a gate. It's either built or it isn't. We thought the finishing touch to the front of the World in Action house would be a nice pair of gates. And the pair we picked to build them, the Barnard Brothers, Jason and Martin. Their professional name, Elder Tree and Fencing. There was no delay when it came to getting their tape measure out to give Oliver a quote. But would they be as quick to build them? They made a promising start. They just happened to have some nice gates in stock.
Okay, what I do, actually I've got a set of gates. Long story, we had a set of 5-foot field gates made.
Yeah.
Customer,
Yeah.
to erect them on one day,
Yeah.
changed his mind.
Oh, right.
Stuck with a nice pair of teak 5-foot.
What, they would?
Yeah, solid wood.
Teak?
Yeah.
We weren't so lucky when it came to the rest of the materials. To buy them, the Barnard boys wanted a deposit, £340 up front.
20, 40, 60, 80, what?
They got the job. They also got the deposit, while we got a definite appointment for the end of the week.
340.
That's lovely. Right. So I should be here about 8 o'clock on Friday morning.
Watch this space. In the meantime, we'd broken the washing machine, or rather our expert Colin Top had. He loosened a hose at the bottom of the machine and caused a little flood. We called in Abel Alpha. It's a wonder Mr. Turner turned up at all, as he told dissatisfied customers his firm had stopped trading. One of them had called in Abel Alpha Limited when her grill broke down.
He spent no more than a couple of moments looking inside the cooker, declared that these 3 parts needed fixing, told me how much it was going to be, wrote out an invoice. He then asked me to sign the back of the invoice to confirm that I agreed the price, and then he kept looking at his watch and said he had to go because he was taking his children to a pantomime. So he was on the premises for probably no more than 5 minutes.
Grilled food was off the menu at the Weech household. Abel Alpha had disappeared with her £100 deposit.
I'd written countless letters and phoned them so many times. I'd just assumed, perhaps naively, that because they'd had my money but not carried out any work, not made any contact whatsoever and tried to do the work, that I could say, well, can I just please have my deposit back?
Mr. Turner didn't ask for a deposit when he came to work on the World in Action washing machine. He had all the parts he needed.
Hello. I'll tell you what price it is. You're looking at about, it's £35 for labour.
Yeah.
The pressure switches faulty on it, they're about £30. It's about 65 for everything.
Yeah.
He didn't really need any parts for our machine. He simply took out and then put back the old ones.
We blew it clean and refitted the same switch.
But he's just charged me for a new one.
That's right, but obviously he didn't fit a new one.
Mr. Turner tightened the loose hose, the real problem, and left with £65 of our money in his pocket. £30 of it for a part he hadn't replaced. Lynn Weech had her grill repaired by another firm, but her battle with Abel Alpha continued. Round 1. Mrs. Weech found she'd have to travel to Doncaster. To fight for her £100, she'd have to fork out for a £93 ticket. Why? Although Mr. Turner's repair business is in the southeast, on paper his head office is in Doncaster, and he was entitled to have the case heard there.
300 miles is just too far to go. And of course, if you're not there representing yourself in person, then you don't stand so much chance.
Mrs. Weech fought on. Round 2. A court decided the case should be transferred back down south. Round 3. Mrs. Weech won the case, but Abel Alpha Limited still have her £100.
So many obstacles can be put in the way to make it really difficult for the consumer to obtain judgment. And then, unfortunately, once you've obtained judgment, then there's more difficulties, because if the trader doesn't pay, what happens then? And again, it's the consumer that needs to go back to the court to maybe get a bailiff to go in. And it's all time and money putting obstacles in the way.
I think it's just quite appalling. I mean, to just sort of take money off people and not come back. If you took money from a shop, you'd be accountable for it, but they don't seem to be. They just run rings around people. They know the legal system inside out, and there doesn't seem to be anything we can do about it.
Back at the World in Action house, it's now 7 days since Elder Fencing was supposed to have started work. Still no gates.
Hello Oliver, it's Jason, Elder Fencing. So I haven't been able to do it this week for you, but it'll be done on Tuesday. The problem being, the gates I left with the supplier, he actually got rid of them, but he's got a new setting for me.
Tuesday came and went. By day 19, Elder Fencing still haven't turned up, though plenty of excuses have.
I'm stuck on a job because Jason's away for a week at the moment, and I'm meant to be with you this week.
Jason's on holiday. We hope our £340 deposit hasn't helped him on his way. Watch this space. There were no such problems when we created an emergency in the World in Action house drains. First, we checked the drains using a camera. Here they are, completely clear, apart from a few cobwebs. Then, armed with a loo roll and a nappy, our resident expert, Colin Topp, blocked them. The first company to call did a thorough job using old-fashioned rods and charged us just £40. Wednesday and Hamilton's drain specialist arrived. They decided they needed to use a jet, and the price for that meant we had to fork out nearly £80, almost double. They cleared the nappy out, but told us there was another problem. So, 3 days later, we invited them back. They had bad news.
Yeah, well, basically what it is, from here we pulled out roots, and there's a manhole there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, they said tree roots had damaged the drains and they needed relining.
We get it from there.
But our thorough survey had shown Hamilton drain specialist were talking cobwebs.
But you think we need the work done, basically, that's what you're saying?
If I lived there, I wouldn't have to do that.
Right, okay.
You know, if I lived there.
Right, well, you're the expert, so I mean, I don't know the first thing about
Yeah.
drains.
Well,
so
no,
you're saying it needs to be done, then we ought to do
we
it.
stand on what we say is what we call true setups.
Yeah.
And the price for this unnecessary work.
Right. So 580 quid, that would include, that's inclusive of that?
There's VAT on top of that.
There's VAT on top of
Only cash
that?
you rely.
Right, so 580 for cash, or if it's cheque,
And I'll still give you a guarantee.
you have to bung the VAT.
Yeah, and we will still give a guarantee, but we'll figures.
Right,
I'll still
okay.
give you a 3-year guarantee.
Right.
Hamiltons insist they are reputable and sent us statements from satisfied customers. By the end of the week, a bigger jet and a bigger price, courtesy of Emergency Man. They turned a nappy in a gully into the great drain robbery. The job should have taken half an hour at most, especially with such a powerful tool. But Emergency Man was in no real hurry, perhaps because we were paying £90 per half hour. Much of the hour he charged us for was spent shuttling from front to back, over 30 times. It cost £211. It's not the first time Emergency Man have been accused of overcharging. They've managed to make a killing out of a crisis hundreds of times over. Trading Standards have over 250 complaints on file, among them the Reverend Maggie Hindley, who was told her blocked sink was a two-man job requiring a big jet.
I couldn't really calculate in my head because I was doing other things. And I said, so we're probably looking at around £200 rather than £70. And they said, yeah. And they actually ran for quite a long time, sort of stopping and starting. And saying, oh, yeah, it's a nasty one, this one. And by the time they left, which was about 6 o'clock, I was really anxious for them to go because I had to get out and pick up my child. And they presented me with the bill, and it was for £734, 38 pence, including VAT. And I was so shocked that I paid.
Another dissatisfied customer. Emergency Man charged £317 to unblock this toilet. They not only failed to unblock it, but smashed the toilet in the process.
Well, I was without the toilet, and it was really awkward because I had cancer in the bladder and I had to go to the toilet about every half hour.
The Smiths' only toilet was unusable for 5 days. It was still blocked. Mr. Smith called Emergency Man again.
He said that he would send him out, but I'd have to pay again. I said, well, I thought you've had enough. I said, you know, I could have bought a new bathroom suite for the money you've taken off me. And he said, no, he said, if we'd send him out again, you'd have to pay again.
Mr. Smith declined their offer. He'd already paid them over £300. He says he'll see them in court. He won't be the first. Consumer law is supposed to stop the antics of persistent offenders like Emergency Man. But it's a long-winded process that allows persistent offenders to carry on trading in the meantime. 5 years ago, complaints about Emergency Man first surfaced. 3 years ago, there were so many that the case passed from Trading Standards to the Office of Fair Trading in London. At this point, Emergency Man had to sign a promise to treat their customers fairly. They broke their promise.
Actions under the Fair Trading Act are an extremely lengthy procedure, and in the time it takes for that to be carried out, people are still being ripped off by these traders.
So lengthy that it's taken 5 years and more than 250 complaints for Emergency Man, owned by Philip Ashby and John Morris, to be brought to court to sign another promise. Only now can they face any real sanction, a prison sentence if complaints continue. We know of only one trader who's been jailed for this in the past 20 years. Luckily for Emergency Man, these assurances hadn't been signed when they visited the Weldon Action House. Everyone agrees this procedure doesn't work. One idea to speed things up is to allow trading standards officers to enforce it at local level.
These problems are at a local level, and we'd like to be able to enforce them at a local level.
But in the meantime, to a lot of people, those assurances will look like too little, too late.
And in many cases, it is too little, too late.
Our dream of a gate has evaporated. 2 months on, Jason Barnard still has our £340 deposit. He obviously wasn't coming back to our house, so we caught up with him.
World in Action, we went to ask you some questions. Do you remember this? It's a receipt for a deposit you took more than 2 months ago.
Yeah, for some
You never
fencing.
built the fence.
Yeah. Oh, but don't put the camera in my face.
Do you build any fences,
Yeah.
or do you just
You can
take
talk to me in my car.
deposits? Well, why didn't you build this one? Did you ever have any intention of building it?
Yeah.
You took £340, no fence. It's the same.
Just like
You took his deposit, you didn't.
Jason Barnard disappeared. He still has our money. Over the past 2 weeks, we've seen the Weldon Action House come under sustained attack from rogue traders. The house is still standing, but we're severely out of pocket. Our cameras have revealed the tricks of the trade in all their horror. We've seen David Lee, the roofer, who turned a broken tile into a wildlife emergency.
I don't want to frighten you or anything, but you've got a squirrel.
I've got a
nest.
squirrel in there.
There's a nest.
Oh no!
Yeah, I'm trying to where it is.
He charged £500 to rid our roof of squirrels' nests he planted. The current penalties mean that it's all too easy for traders like him to flourish.
Well, this is an extremely profitable way for these traders to trade. They will risk trading like this because they know a £600 fine they can afford to pay when they're ripping people off for £20,000, £11,000, £6,000, you know, £500 a day. They can afford the £600 fine.
There are ways to keep the cowboys at bay. Get 3 written quotations and check up on previous work. If you do that, it's less likely the Ralphs of this world will get anywhere near your loft. Agree the price and the work that needs to be done with the trader. Get it in writing before the work starts. That should help keep firms like Emergency Man in check. Accept discounts for cash at your peril. There's usually a catch.
Is it a big job?
For years, report after report have suggested how the cowboys should be controlled. No single obvious solution has emerged, though most agree that a register of traders which consumers can access easily would be a good place to start. The Weldon Action House of Horrors has produced amazing evidence of just how bad things are at the rough end of the home repair industry. A government review is now underway. Among the changes being considered are stronger powers for trading standards officers and registers of traders.
So if we were to set up the World in Action House in 2 years' time, can we expect to see anything different?
We can never promise to stamp out all problems. We're dealing with a very large problem indeed. But we are determined to take action, and I would very much hope that within 2 years' time we will see a substantial reduction in the scale of the problem, and more to the point that the public will have far better safeguards, so that if problems do occur, and some are bound to, then there will be better redress, and there will be more effective measures to take action against rogue traders and cowboy builders.
In the meantime, it's left up to the customers. Be vigilant. Beware.
And also, you made one more mistake. Right? I'll tell you something. What you've done here.
Somewhere near you, there could be a cowboy laughing all the way to the bank.
They said it couldn't be found. The sinking of the Gaul begins a new season of